This is kind of what I've been using as an anvil. If you could see here, it's called an X block. It's from school. It's pretty much just an X joint, and these are all filled in with weld, so it's kind of square. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this plate on there, 1/4 inch, 4 inches wide by 1 foot. I'm going to start filling it up in here, and eventually it'll be like a big block, and then afterwards I'm going to hard face along here and grind that as smooth as I can, and I think that'll be pretty good service.
Afternoon, folks. So I've started a little online store on Etsy. Been making little articles out of metal, you know, like coat hooks and stuff like that. Flagpoles. I got some cool flagpole mounts I made up. But I like to make these hex head bolts into square head bolts in order to kind of match the feel. And to do that, I heat them up and kind of form them. But I haven't really had a good device to do that on. I had like a big chunk of metal from one of my classes at Hobart, but it wasn't really working too well. And you know, anvil prices, finding them even is pretty tough, and I really can't justify like a full-size anvil for what I'm doing at this point. But I didn't really want to get one of those Harbor Freight ones. I didn't really think it was worth it, and probably just wouldn't get that much use in the future. So I decided to take that big chunk of metal and start trying to kind of build a makeshift anvil out of it, and I made a bit of progress on it. It's a lot of welding. Most of it's going to be weld metal, but hey, it's always good to run beads, get good practice, try one-handed, try going left. So I'm doing a lot of that, but I want to kind of document this project a little bit just to see how it turns out, maybe give some people some ideas if they would like to do something like this. Let's get at it.
So this is where I stand after, you know, a good couple hours of welding. This is going to be a lot to fill in, but I want to make this flush. And I kind of offset this piece a little bit. I want to fill this in and then kind of have it be like a London pattern anvil almost, and have like a Pritchell hole up here at least. Maybe a Hardy hole if I get ambitious. And then here I'm going to grind this down when it's all done and kind of have that little step there. And then I have these other pieces I want to weld on here. Maybe even this to kind of make a horn. And then I want to make a base. So this is going to be a lot of welding. And probably this is not the most practical way to do this, especially if you're not a welder. You don't really care to get that much practice. Well, take a look at that. That's where I'm at so far. It's a lot of welding. I can't tell if I'm really creative and smart or if I'm just an idiot. But I guess I originally planned on making that like square all the way down, but looking at it, I might have to look up what an actual anvil looks like. I assume I want a little bit of a square edge here at least for forming stuff on, but maybe I don't need to fill that all the way in. Okay, it's kind of looking like an anvil, huh? We'll get there. I fortunately found a couple pieces of inch thick steel I started using for the base. This is just an absurd amount of buildup, and again, I'm kind of on that line of, am I batshit crazy or am I just creative? And you know, kind of struggle with that most of my life, but this is going to be pretty substantial. But I am glad I saved these pieces of metal. I got another piece of shaft I'm going to put on there, a thinner one, and kind of build it up down like that. And I'm thinking about cutting some 1/4 inch pieces I have and putting a gusset in there just to help me guide these beads on this buildup. This part, I think I'm going to try and cut some of that off there to make that kind of bend into there, kind of like that, so I have enough room for a Hardy hole there. I was using these rods. It says Lincoln Electric, but they're made in Mexico. These 7018 AC rods, and these are just from Lowe's or Home Depot. And these really weren't welding very well. The slag was dark and just looked like crap, and the puddle even had that slag kind of swirling around in the back of the puddle, and just wasn't going well. I was even getting porosity with clean rods and stuff like that. Not so good, but I picked these up at the Tractor Supply, these Hobart ones. These are made in the U.S. They're made right here in Troy, Ohio, actually, right next to the welding school. And just running a couple of them, these are definitely a lot better. The slag's kind of that olive color, and the puddle's a lot more kind of clear, that swirling stuff. So can't say I recommend these rods at all. I know the Lincoln Excalibur ones, the ones you get in like the metal tin from like a weld supply. Those are good rods, but I don't know if these are just rebranded, but these run like crap. These ones from Tractor Supply are way better. That's more like it right there. You can see up here, I really just bet a lot of porosity. Sometimes like mid-bead, and you know, usually first you ought to try and figure out if you're the one doing something wrong, but you gotta kind of know how to diagnose it too. Like I know how to prevent porosity with technique and amperage and stuff like that, and with those Home Depot rods I really had to turn it up a few amps and have a really heavy drag angle, which isn't really normal. These Hobart rods are running a whole lot better, and worth mentioning, I suppose, if you're trying to learn how to weld, then you'll do yourself a favor to get good rods, just to eliminate, you know, eliminate a factor there. If you know the rods are good and you're having trouble, then it's probably going to be you, and you can kind of focus in on that. But if you have crap rods and they can't run, then really you're not doing yourself any favors as far as trying to learn. But these are running pretty great, actually, at about 160 amps. These are 532 rods, actually, which I really haven't run a whole lot of, but it's pretty cool. Definitely a bigger bead, you get more out of a rod. Definitely helps for a project like this where that's just a lot of build up. This is with the Hobart rods. You can see it's kind of that olive color, and then this is from those Home Depot rods. It's kind of black and burnt and crappy looking, and I think that's kind of a big indicator. I didn't really mean to turn this into a reality comparison video, but man, what a stark difference that is. And I actually recall in a video Jody made, Welding Tips and Tricks, it was about he was comparing some 70-24 rods, and one of them was a good brand, Lincoln, I think, and then the other one was like that Blue Demon crap, and he kind of mentioned that he had to run higher than the recommended amperage to get the crappy ones to work, and even when they did run, there was that swirling around, that flux swirling behind the puddle. You could kind of see that dark stuff swirling around, and the slag not coming off easy, and like kind of the color of the slag, it's kind of an indicator it's a lower quality rods. Rough. Should have laid it on its side like this to start. It worked a little better, but I mean, it's not a very big torch that I have, and this is pretty thick as it is, but that's not actually that bad. I might just finish it with a grinder, maybe just have that taper kind of like that. If you cook too much sauce on your patio, you'll blow a big hole. That's what that pop was. Kind of scared me for a second, but I think I'm going to add a little more in here to kind of match this, clean that up, and yeah, we're getting there. Yep, still going at her. Cutting that off there gave me a little bit of hope, kind of looked a little more like an anvil. Not quite like the nice whoop I was going for, but I think that's a little ambitious. So I'm thinking of maybe just filling this in flush and coming right kind of down to a point here, and it'll be a little bit more like a European German pattern anvil. I think that's kind of the way it's shaping up anyway. Got some acetylene and oxygen, did a little bit of shaping of that horn. Now overall I think it's a little disproportionate to what like a normal anvil is. A normal horn kind of goes out far, even like a German pattern one, but you know, for my purposes, I think that's gonna work out okay. Acetylene was definitely a lifesaver. I welded these pieces of bend strap on there just to kind of have a base. Probably build this up a little bit, maybe fill that in. A little bit more work, but not bad. Started filling in down here a bit, kind of thicken up that base. I'm probably gonna try and go all the way up to here, so maybe a couple more layers. Probably clean this up. I'm gonna have to straighten this out. That kind of warped, or distorted rather, from the welding. Kind of had a Pritchell hole idea here. That was a bitch to drill, but it's pretty thick right there. But still might try and go for a hardy hole. But you know, it's gonna be a lot of grinding to make this look nice. I might not worry about that for now, but you know, it's pretty good. It's been a few weeks. I've kind of been using this to do these square head ones. That one's screwed up, but just as an example. I drilled another hole here. This one I'm going to eventually try and form into more of a hardy hole, but I have been using these, and it's definitely useful to have the holes. I didn't grind the sides just because it's kind of a lot of work for not a lot of benefit, really, and I realized I kind of have a little bit of a bad habit of like starting these projects and not really giving very good closure to the end, but you could kind of take this at this point to whatever point you want if you want to grind those sides down to look nice. If I were to do anything differently, I'd probably try and add a little bit more on this horn here. Again, I mentioned it was kind of disproportionate to like how a normal anvil is supposed to be, but for what I'm doing, it's worked pretty well. I'm still not really clear if a face is supposed to just be mild steel or if hard face would be too much, but I've just been using it as is right now, and it's certainly better than what I had. So that was a project. There's probably like, you know, 20-25 pounds of welding rod that goes in there and a lot of beads, so not the most practical way, but you know, I thought it was kind of a cool project. Definitely helped me do a little bit better on those bolts, but that's all for this project. Yeah, let me know what you think. Pretty sketchy, but that's all for now. Take care.